The Maple Leafs lose to Ovi and the Capitals in his return to the lineup. And what's the latest with Auston Matthews moving forward? That more on today's episode of the Locked On Leafs podcast, part of the Locked On Podcast Network. It's your team every day.
You're Locked On Maple Leafs, your daily podcast on the Toronto Maple Leafs. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network. Your team every day.
Hello and welcome into the Locked On at Leafs podcast, a daily Maple Leaf centered podcast hosted by myself. And typically I have a co-host, Dave Morisuti, with me, but he's on vacation. He's sailing the 7 seas this week. And then I'll be out there on the water next week. So we're kind of doing a little swapskis. So joining me to break down the weekend and get us set for what's coming up later on in the week is my good friend Cam Moore, who's also works with me at TSN. He's the Maple Leafs game night producer. So definitely knows his stuff when it comes to the Maple Leafs. What's going on, pal?
Not much, man. Not much. Going off a pretty upsetting loss from the weekend. They're a good team, though. Washington, good team. You know, we talk about the Leafs, that they're one of the best teams when it comes to 5-5 goal differential. Washington's right up there, too, man.
Oh, yeah. Washington's one of the best teams in the league at putting pucks in the back of the net. And they were able to fire 5 into the back of the goal, 4 of which were against Matt Murray, 1 of which ended up being an empty netter, obviously, that one being Ovechkin's goal. He made his return in this one. Before we go any further, I do want to let you guys know that today's show is brought to you by FanDuel. You can start the season with a big return on FanDuel. New customers can place a $5 bet and you'll get started with $250 in bonus bets if you win that first $5 bet. Visit FanDuel.com to get started. And yeah, $5 on Ovi for an anytime goal would have been a nice payday for you if you were tailing that bet on Saturday night. And that's really unbelievable. Like the Leafs, they lose the game 5-2, and I don't know. It kind of felt like a bit of a scheduled loss. I don't know how you felt about it, but like Toronto, second night of a back-to-back, they had to come back, cross-border travel, not too far from Detroit, but cross-border travel. The Capitals were waiting for them. They hadn't played a game since the holidays, so they were very well rested. And then they got that bump, right? The OV bump by him returning to the lineup. I wasn't surprised to see them lose this game. I could be completely honest with you. Not that it was a quote-unquote scheduled loss, I guess, but it wasn't one that I was surprised to see.
No, not at all. Like Ovi coming back, huge boost, like mentally to that team that definitely needed a little bit of Ovi love there. And the empty netter was really funny to me because Ovi's just cherry picking. I think he's earned it at that point.
Oh yeah, every empty net has to get Ovi. If there's an empty net, he better be on the ice. Like if you're Spencer Carberry, that's really all you need to make sure. That's what you got to worry about. The final minute, empty net. Make sure you get Ovi out there.
He'll be doubled over, sipping on his Pepsi that he has in his water bottle. Come on, Ovi, get out there. Empty netter. We need to get you that record before the season's over. But, man, Matt Murray, the 4 goals, doing well in the AHL, but in terms of NHL goalie, there's such a gap. Everyone talks about it. Like every single player that comes up in the AHL talks about the amount of the skill gap between the AHL and the NHL. And you saw it with Matt Murray against the Capitals.
Yeah, for sure. And it's a much quicker game. It's interesting though, because you do talk to some goalies who feel like it can be easier though, because the play in front of you is typically a lot sharper, right? Like usually your defensive structure is far more well structured in the NHL than it is in the American League. But that wasn't the case against the Washington Capitals. It looked like a tired team, and there was far too many turnovers that led to chances the other way that kind of, not that Matt Murray, had to face the toughest of challenges, but there were some off the rush stuff. There was some transition opportunities. I mean, the first goal, you can't really let that in. That was a bad one. There's a couple goals that Matt Murray, I feel, let in. A couple of softies that he probably does want back in that game. And subsequently, he ended up getting sent back down to the Marlies actually yesterday. Dennis Hildeby was sent up. We'll see if that's if we're going to see him spend a decent portion of time down in the Marlies, or is this a way to, I don't know, skirt the system? Because like Matt Murray, interestingly, like, do they just want to basically bring him up on night 2 of back-to-backs? Is that all they're going to do? Because as of now, both of which, Murray and Hildeby, can both clear waivers. But if Murray's on the team for over a month, then at that point, he's going to have to clear. So that's where I like, a lot of people like, oh, Matt Murray got sent down, but it doesn't necessarily mean that he got sent down and he's going to stay down there, because he already got sent down once before. And again, they bring him back up for that back-to-back. So I am curious, and obviously neither of us know the answer to this question, but the fact that Murray got sent down to me doesn't necessarily say, oh, they don't believe in him. I think there's a good chance that we see him back here rather quickly.
Oh, definitely. Oh, definitely. They have one of the best like cap managers slash rules geniuses up there in that front office in the Leafs end. So, they're like, hey, if we keep this guy too much, we might lose him because some teams might need some goaltending depth going forward. We've seen the Leafs run 3 goalies last year with Martin Jones coming in through there. So being able to we can send Murray down, we can pick up Hildeby, and if Hildeby plays and he plays well, we can keep him up here for a little bit. But this is kind of Wolves' team now till Stolarz returns. This is Wolves. If there's a game where there's like, oh, there's a couple days rest or at least a day rest, you better believe Joseph Woll's going to be in the net there.
Oh, 100%. And he's going to be in the game tomorrow against the Islanders. That's going to be the case. And, he's pretty much going to start a bulk of the games for as long as Anthony Stolarz is out. And he's still, expected to be out another month or so until he gets back. So it's Stolarz' net. And the difficult part is it's just been such a tough schedule. And, you go back to the game that the Leafs lost the other day, like it was on night 2 of a back-to-back. And if you look back at the entire month of December, they played a back-to-back every weekend. Every single weekend, whether it was the Friday, Saturday, or the Saturday, Sunday, the Maple Leafs had a back-to-back, and they went just 1-3 in the second nights of those back-to-backs. So really difficult schedule that they've had. And I don't know if you saw this stat out there, but the Maple Leafs have 16 total back-to-backs this year, which is obviously the most of anyone in the NHL. The Winnipeg Jets only have 8 back-to-backs. Like, is that not a massive competitive disadvantage for the Maple Leafs to have to play double the amount of back-to-backs as some other teams in the NHL?
Well, yeah, for sure, because you're guaranteed to not play your best goaltender on the back half, the back-to-back, unless you're insane. Like this isn't 2003 where you're putting Marty Brodeur out there for 70 games. This is a modern NHL where starting goalies are maybe playing 55, 60 instead of that 70 threshold. So when you have the Winnipeg Jets who only have 8 back-to-backs, like you said, you got Hellebuck for as much as you want because you're not playing as many back-to-backs. That means you have at least a day before it's like, okay, we can put Hellebuck out there again. We're not stressing it because he's had a full day of rest. The Leafs can't exactly do that the same way. And it's definitely an issue for Toronto specifically, just because of how the health of their goaltenders have kind of figured out. Woll has a history of not being able to stay healthy. Stolarz hasn't played more than like 27 games in an entire season. That could haunt them going down the line. So yeah, it's absolutely a disadvantage to the Maple Leafs, and maybe the conspiracy theory going back.
Wow.
I'm playing there.
I'm not going to play that card. I'm not playing that card.
About that
I'm not playing that card. But like you talk about it from a goaltending perspective, but like the whole team. I mean, you look at how they played, especially like those last 2 games prior to the Christmas break. Like it looked like a team that had run out of gas. Like they played so many games. I think it was 11 or 12 games in like a 22 game span. It was just so much hockey there right before the break. And then they come out of the 3-day Christmas break and right away back to back Friday, Saturday, and then they got an afternoon game on Tuesday, New Year's Eve. So it's just a lot of hockey still. And then there's 13 games in January. Like it's just a very condensed schedule for the Maple Leafs. They had that kind of 2-week, it wasn't even a break, but like they played 4 games in a 2-week span, and that was it. It was like Wednesday, Sunday, then Wednesday and Saturday the following week. And like I guess that was a time where, they got away with being able to not play Matthews for a month because they didn't have many games, but that has not been the case of late. And, with Matthews' injury and a bunch of other guys, feeling it as the last couple of games and obviously the tired legs popping up, you're starting to see a tired team, and there's no real end in sight. So they got to figure something out. But speaking of the Matthews injury, we'll have an update for you guys on the other side of what's going on with him. Will he play on New Year's Eve against the Islanders? Craig Berube gave us the answer. And if not, who's taking his place? It's an interesting name. We'll get to that. Canada's crazy loss to Latvia as well on Friday, and what to expect against the Americans on New Year's Eve. We'll get to all of that and more coming up on the Locked On Leafs podcast. I'm Mike DiStefano, Cam Moore filling in for Dave Morisuti here on Locked On Leafs. Today's episode is brought to you by Prize Picks. You can now win up to 100 times your money on Prize Picks with as little as 4 correct picks. Prize Picks is the only real money daily fantasy platform with an injury insurance policy so your lineups can stay in play even if one of your players gets injured or if your player leaves in the first half and doesn't return. Prize Picks keeps your lineup live. Prize Picks put its members first, so all withdrawals are fast, safe, and secure. When my picks hit, I get my money in as quick as 15 minutes. Sign up today and instantly get $50 when you play $5. You don't even need to win to receive the $50 bonus. It's guaranteed. PrizePicks is the best way to win real money this football season. Which players are going off, which ones aren't. Make your picks in less than 60 seconds and turn your sports opinions into real money all season long on PrizePicks. Download the app today and use the code LOCKEDONNHL to get $50 instantly after you play your first $5 lineup. PrizePicks. Run your game. Welcome back into the Locked On Leafs podcast. Mike DiStefano with Cam Moore filling in for Dave Morisuti. We got new episodes coming out each and every weekday, Monday through Friday, free and available wherever you get a podcast and also up on YouTube. We'd ask if you have enjoyed the content so far and you've watched a couple episodes and you continue to support us, subscribe. That'd be greatly appreciated as well. So the Maple Leafs had a practice after an off day on Sunday. They had a practice on Monday. A couple of updates from the practice camp. Oliver Ekman-Larsson was absent. He was absent with an illness, according to head coach Sheldon Keefe. It will be a game time decision for tomorrow. Phil Myers was skating alongside of Morgan Rielly in his place. And then you had Timmins and Simon Benoit as the third pair. So, possibly no Oliver Ekman-Larsson for the game against the Islanders, which would kind of suck. Like, he's played pretty well. He hasn't been as good as he was in the first, we'll say, month of the season. But OEL, I think he would still be quite a miss on the blue line if he can't go.
He's been steady, and it's really funny. His career arc to me. I was talking this I think a few days ago with one of the guys doing the Leafs game. Is just he was drafted as this like offensive dynamo to Arizona, and then that didn't work out. And then he goes to Vancouver
for like a few years. He was great,
but no team results there. You go to Vancouver, expected to kind of do the same thing. Doesn't really work out there. Then he goes to Florida in this like sheltered defensive third pair role where he plays a bit more heavy, plays a bit more physical, and still has some of that puck moving prowess. It's awesome. The Leafs came in and was like, we'll pay you this money. And he's been a great Leaf. I think he's performed like, if you look at a lot of people coming into this season were like, Ekman-Larsson, I don't like it. I don't like the money. And he's come in and he's done exactly what he's asked. And it's like, we have a guy who's learned to play heavy hockey. He's playing Berube hockey, but he can also move the puck. And it's nice to look through that lineup and not see Morgan Rielly. Morgan Rielly is the only puck moving defenseman there. It'll be a huge loss.
Yeah, it would be. I mean, Connor Timmins can move the puck a little bit. Jake McCabe's like not a terrible, like, he's not as bad as some people think, or maybe it's a little underappreciated the way that he can move with the puck. But yeah, like no one can, get it going offensively like Oliver Ekman-Larsson and Morgan Rielly. Those guys can really skate with it and get some offense moving from the defensive end up to the offensive zone. So he'll be a game time decision for tomorrow's game against the Winnipeg or the New York Islanders. Someone who will not be playing in the game. He is not a game time decision because Auston Matthews was declared out earlier today by head coach Craig Berube. So no Matthews again. So that'll be make that fifth straight game that he'll now be out due to injury, the re-aggravated injury to Auston Matthews. So he will not play against the Winnipeg Jets. Why did I keep, because I got Jets written down here. Let's change that to Islanders so that I don't
scratch that out.
Let's put Islanders and get the right team in there. They're playing the New York Islanders, who aren't a very good team, but it's still a big loss whenever you're missing your big dog in Auston Matthews. And at least have done well, I suppose, this season and throughout his career without Matthews. But I think you've kind of seen over the last couple of weeks that the team that's constructed this year, it just feels like they're not nearly deep enough down the middle. And if you watch what happened today in practice, Cam, David Kampf was skating as the second line center alongside Nyes and Nylander and projects to be there tomorrow, I guess, with Matthews out. Like, that's just simply not good enough for this team. You're not going to win a whole lot of hockey games if you have to put David Kampf at 2C. That's no disrespect for David Kampf. I think he's an NHL body, he's an NHL player, but he definitely does not deserve to be that high up in the lineup.
No, he's a fourth line guy through and through. Just put him in the D zone, let him win a draw. He's sound defensively, but when you're in those top six roles, you have to do something in the offensive zone. And he's like an anchor to Willie and Nyes. I hate to say that because it's pretty mean, but he is an anchor offensively. And this is a point.
One goal this year in 24 games. One goal.
I know they want to take it slow with Fraser Minton, but this is a situation where if I'm in the shoes of Trey Living, I'm bringing him up and I'm putting him in there and I'm giving him those top 6 minutes. I'm like, hey, we'll run it for a period, see if you can hang. We like what you can do, and you played excellently when you're up for a little bit, filling in for the injuries. We'll give you 2 really strong guys. We know that you're smart. Like, Berube's saying his praises about how smart he is, and he just needs reps. Yeah. Great opportunity to just, like, if he's better than what you have, I don't really see, like, I know you want to take it slow, but I don't really, you kind of need that guy right now because you could slide a little bit.
Yeah, I see that as an option, but I think they want him to season up a little bit more in the American League before throwing him out to the Wolves in like a top 6 role. So I don't know if he's necessarily like the answer immediately, maybe down the road, but it might still be just a bit too soon. Like, the defensive numbers and the analytics overall did start to dip like the more and more he was in the NHL. I think, I think people understood like how you can beat this guy, essentially lean on him a little bit, but for whatever reason, his numbers started to dip. I just I still I laugh, Cam, because remember back in day 1 of training camp, and all of a sudden William Nylander's taking line rushes at the center ice position, and they said, yeah, we're going to give it a real go. Right. And he says, yeah, I told Chief, like, if we're going to do it, we got to do it for more than one game. Well, it didn't really last. And like within 3 days, I think he was taken off center ice and put back on the wing. And he hasn't really seen the center of the ice since. But like, this is a break glass situation, Cam. Like, in those circumstances, this is when you need to try Willie at center, in my opinion. When you're sitting there and your option is David Kampf or William Nylander, how is David Kampf the answer? Like, how does Craig Berube physically go on the whiteboard and write Kampf in the 2C hole? I just don't understand how his stomach doesn't curdle when he's writing that down on the whiteboard. I don't get it.
Even then, like, this is a perfect opportunity for them to even try something crazier and maybe throw Mitch there.
Possibly, like that's an option too. Like, granted, what they usually would do is move Domi up. But that third line has played so well with Domi, McMahon, and you could argue right now, like, maybe that's the second line, Domi, McMahon, and Nick Robertson. But they don't want to touch that line because they've had a lot of chemistry and they've been scoring. So that is one caveat to this, where it's like, okay, we don't want to touch that because usually Domi could move into that role. But outside of that, like, Camp's the best option. Are we kidding me?
If you're Brad Trey Living, you got to start dipping into your bag a little bit and just look and saying, look, okay, if Matthews isn't going to be here for however long, if he's going to continue to miss chunks of the regular season, because we know we need this guy as healthy. We know we're going to make the playoffs. We got to make sure this guy's healthy as possible heading into the first round of playoffs. Got to start treading the waters, or at least shooting some texts out there, seeing what some of the lowly teams. Hey, Yanni Gourde, is he available? Seattle? Like, depends. How do you feel about Mikhail Granlund out of San Jose? Guys who are expiring, potentially cheap rentals, because the Leafs don't really have that many picks, and you have Cowan, you have Minton as like top tier prospects, and clearly you don't want to get rid of them. And Cowan with his World Juniors currently, I guess his stock is a little. I don't know how much GMs put stock into
I'd say he's got
international
like pretty
tournaments.
high stock. Like I think
Yeah.
he's a top tier talent at this point, top tier
Mhm.
prospect. I'm sure a lot of players or a lot of general managers would, rate him highly in
Mhm.
terms of a trade asset that they like to bring into their organization. But I don't get the sense that the Leafs are willing to
No.
move on from those players to make whatever deal they have to make. That's the thing. It feels almost like it's going to be more of a depth player. Like I think the Yanni Gourde one is probably like that's a name that's been kicked around quite a bit within Leafs Nation, like a third line center who could in a pinch get, pushed up the lineup a bit. But even like Yanni Gourde to me is just like not a lot of offense out of that guy. Like Gourde really hasn't scored at all this year. In the past, like when he was in Tampa, he was putting up a little bit of offense. Like he had one goal his first year when he was in Seattle. He had 21 goals. He had a 25 goal season when he was in Tampa. 22 goal season one year, like a career high 64 points, which is pretty good. His first 2 years in Seattle, he put up 48 points apiece, but this year just 5 goals in 33 games. Like, yeah, it's more than David Kamp's giving you, but it doesn't scream like, oh, he's a guy who can play in your top six. Like when Matthews is gone, you can shoot him up and get, still get some secondary scoring, and he could provide some offense. Like that's the only thing. I think Yanni Gourde would be perfect if this addition to this team when they're healthy as the team's like 3C, but I don't think he has that two-way capability at this point anymore to move up and give you some offense. Brock Nelson is a guy who I think could give you that, though. Like he's someone who could definitely score you some goals, and he can play your third line center, a bit of a heavier role. You brought up Mikael Granlund. I actually do like that. More of a piece who could go up and he could kind of play the wing. He can play center. He can play, middle six somewhere in that rank. He could kind of move them all over. He'd be a nice move piece for this team. So I think there are a couple of options. Ryan O'Reilly's been brought up as a player that a lot of Leaf fans would love to bring back up into the fold. That'd be more of the higher echelon
He doesn't like
players,
it
I
here.
suppose. He didn't like it here, but now it's no longer Sheldon Keefe in the mix. Now it's Chief, right? Craig Berube, who he won a Stanley Cup with, who he rode as his Conn Smythe winner en route to a Stanley Cup. So I feel like Ryan O'Reilly would give Toronto a second chance now that it's Coach Craig Berube at the helm instead of Sheldon Keefe. It's a bit of a different situation now. It's a different culture now than it was when he was here a couple of years ago during the Dubas and Keefe era.
Yeah, the market's kind of the same. That was his big complaint, right? When he was saying like the market and the media and everything
Yeah,
like that.
I mean,
I guess
sure.
I guess you do trade it if you're like, hey, I can probably win a cup with these guys. I think you definitely
Exactly. Like
you swallow that for a little bit. I'll be uncomfortable and I'll take some questions for a couple months if it means that I can have a
for a
run.
chance. Like
Yeah.
he's got no chance in Nashville right now. No chance,
No.
right? No chance at all.
What a disaster that team's been,
Dude, I
unfortunately. I
know.
love Barry Trotz. He's a great guy, but they're not able to string it together.
No, it's tough. It's tough. But yeah, I'm in agreement with you, man. Like when you get to a point where David Kampf has to come, you're really only missing one centerman. Like you're missing one guy, and all of a sudden it's like, oh, David Kampf has to come up and play second line center. It really goes to show the lack of depth down the middle that your team has. And yeah, if Matthews is going to miss an extended period of time now. He seems to be getting better. He at least skated in practice today. He was in and out of drills, but still not going to play tomorrow. We'll see what it looks like come the new year. Once the magic ball drops in Times Square, we'll see if magically his body gets put back together and he can start 2025 anew. We'll see, but he's not going to play to again before the end of 2024. We do know that. All right, on the other side, Cam, I want to get into what's going on at the World Junior Championships because Canada had an absolute stinker over the weekend. They lost to Latvia, Cam. Latvia. It was unbelievable. And then they got a big-time matchup against USA tomorrow. So we'll kind of look back on the Latvian loss and see if you give them a chance to beat USA and still with a shot to claim top spot in Group A. We'll get to that and more next here on the Locked On Leafs podcast, part of the Locked On Podcast Network. It's your team every day. Today's episode is brought to you by FanDuel. The NFL playoffs are almost here, but it's not too late to get in on the regular season action with FanDuel, America's #1 sportsbook. Right now, new customers can finish the season strong with $250 in bonus bets if your first $5 bet wins. FanDuel has so many ways to pick up a W. I love betting on which players will score a touchdown, how many points each team's going to score. It's really a thrilling adventure. Just visit FanDuel.com to join today. That's FanDuel.com for a chance at $250 in bonus bets. Make every moment more with FanDuel, an official sportsbook partner of the Locked On Network. The Locked On Leafs podcast continues. Mike DiStefano, Cameron Moore filling in for Dave Morassutti. He'll be back next week, but just myself this week, and a cast of characters will come in and out. But today we're lucky with Cam joining us for this one. And Cam, were you working? You're at TSN and you're doing some of these games. Were you working the World Junior game, the Latvian game at all?
I was sick, but I was watching and helping out as much as I could from.
Is that what made you sick? Watching Canada lose to Latvia? Did it make your stomach curdle as much as mine?
Man, this team's so uninspiring. I hate thinking about it because like it has nothing to do with the kids, but the guys who are there, there's some of them that I definitely would prefer some other guys be there for, and it's
Zane Parekh.
Yeah, Zane Parekh, Carter Yakimchuk should be Beckett Seneca, Riley Height, Andrew Crystal. Like it just this team is missing this team is missing some offensive punch, and that was
firepower.
Like Latvia game. They're letting these teams that historically we perform so well against just hang around, and that's so dangerous in these international tournaments because then they start like they see this high and mighty Canada, the giants that are Canada, and they start to believe, and they really start to play like it too, and they elevate themselves, and like we let Germany hang around till the third period till Canada put the clamps on. But letting these teams hang around is dangerous, and the team you definitely don't want to let hang around is the United States. Who you talk about firepower? That first line, Hagens, Perreault, Riley Leonard's best line in the World Juniors right now. And I'm scared, man. For New Year's Eve, I'm scared.
Yeah, and FanDuel, I mean, somehow as Canada favored. I mean, you might be able to get some decent value by hammering the Americans in this game, but hopefully, I mean, here's the thing: is you'd never know, right? Like Canada beat Finland 4-0. Finland just beat USA 4-3, and because of that, if Canada beats the Americans, they have a chance to go on to win. And they can go on to win Group A and end up with the #1 seed despite losing to Latvia. Like it's just so bizarre. But yeah, to go back to what you were talking about, they absolutely can't be doing that. If they're going to beat US, they got to start on time and they got to play a full 60-minute hockey game because that's what it's going to take. You can't let them hang around like you did with Latvia. Like it was a tie game for the most of it. And then, Toronto, the Canadians score late in the third. You're thinking, okay, they escaped with a win. And then all of a sudden Latvia scores. And then they take that thing to overtime, goes to a shootout, and they lose in a shootout. And I don't know if you saw the scenes in Latvia. It was pretty incredible. There's a lot of people really excited to see that happen. But, oh, boy, a lot of cooler conversations today around the country that people still talking about that loss to Latvia. And that's like 2 games ago, because then the next night they went out and they beat Germany. Or 2 nights later, they went out and beat Germany Sunday night. And it was a 3-0 win, but it wasn't nearly enough to take the sour taste out of the Friday loss. And I think we look at both of those games, though, like we're talking about 2 of the, more mediocre teams at this tournament. You only get 1 goal at 5-on-5. That's just inexcusable for a powerhouse such that is the Canadians at this World Junior Tournament.
Yeah, and the power play, at least the power play, they figured it out. They moved Sam Dickinson up to play QB. They moved Bonk down to his familiar bumper position, and it worked out. But man,
Bumper
Bonk was he was solid. And another solid thing, Carter George, man.
Yeah,
this guy is a winner at the international level. He is a winner. He hasn't allowed a goal yet at this tournament. He's the guy. It's weird because Canada, you look back historically, goaltending at the World Juniors hasn't really been our strong suit, at barring like a couple of names. usually it's our weak spot. But Carter George
Justin
is our
Pogge,
yeah.
stud World
he is
Junior player.
he's a stud World Junior player.
Pretty sure he's the goalie coach for this team too.
Yeah, and man, he's seeing Carter George right now kind of replicate his performance because George is, man, he's the best player on this team right now. I don't think you can make a single argument that anyone else on this team other than Carter George. I think he has 2 Player of the Game awards already.
Yeah.
Back to back shutouts.
I mean, he hasn't allowed a goal. Like he's really the reason why they were able to beat Germany. And honestly, if it wasn't for Yakimchuk, it's the Jack Ivankovic.
Jack Ivankovic, yeah.
Yeah, if it wasn't for him, like against Latvia too, like he made some big stops against Latvia too. Like, dude, Latvia could have won that thing in regulation.
It's kind of embarrassing that we're thinking about that. Latvia could have beat Canada in regulation.
Dude, it's embarrassing that they beat Canada in general. Like you don't even have to put a qualifier on it. It's just flat out embarrassing, dog.
It is very nice that the world is kind of stepping up. And I think I thought about this. I was talking to my dad about this. I think Canada, and you realize how this team's constructed, you want to build a team. Like, well, we don't have to take our best players. We want to build a good team. I think it kind of speaks to some arrogance a little bit on the Canadian part. We're not that good anymore. I mean, we're still good. We're still good, but we're not that good anymore.
Well, so do you think Canada built a team, or do you think that they took the best players? Because it seems like they tried to build a team, though, like with an identity. What I mean.
They tried to build a team.
Well, why? Like take the best players. Like that's where I don't understand, and it's coming to it's backfiring on them. It really is backfiring on them right here. And they got the Americans tomorrow, and the Americans they took their best players, and the best players are performing quite well to this point. Their goaltender Trey Augustine's also playing really well, so he's going to be a tough goalie to beat. So it's going to be just as tough, if not tougher, than it was to score against Latvia and Germany. I mean, Toronto's got. I keep going to say Toronto. Canada has a serious problem on their hands going into this game against the Americans, because it's going to be tough to score, and they're not going to get by scoring just 1 or 2 goals. Because although Carter George has been unbelievable, he hasn't played an offense like the Americans quite yet. So we'll see what ends up happening in this game, but. Like I said, FanDuel has the Americans as the underdogs, and I find that very interesting, considering how both of these teams have looked on the ice. Might be willing to place a wager on old Team USA there. I don't know, but should be a fun game. That's a 7:30 puck drop. The Maple Leafs in action also earlier in the day, a 1 o'clock puck drop. I will be sure to get another episode. I believe I'm going to try and get another episode out to pregame it in the morning for you guys to try and tee you up for that game. But if I don't, enjoy it. Enjoy Canada, USA. And again, if I don't end up getting a podcast up in the morning, have a happy New Year, everybody. And enjoy yourselves and be safe on New Year's night, and enjoy all of the festivities. Cam, really want to thank you and appreciate you for stepping in for Big Dave here.
No problem, man. Thank you for having me.
Absolutely. We'll get you out again sometime. All righty. That'll do it for us here today on the podcast. I'd like to thank you for listening and supporting the show. You can subscribe to the Locked On Leafs podcast on all podcast platforms and receive daily Leafs content. Follow myself on Twitter at Mickey_Canuck. Follow Cam at the Cam Moore, and also follow the show at Locked On Leafs. We'll be back with another episode for you guys tomorrow. But until then, keep it locked right here on Locked On Leafs.